Hey guys, it's Caden. Welcome to another Autism Digest interview, where today we have our first medical professional and someone I'm very excited to talk to because he actually worked with one of my favorite comedians' daughters, specifically Kevin James. He's the pioneer of something called the Melillo method. I had a chance to look at his website, and some of the techniques he uses are extremely unique. He's the author of Disconnected Kids, and his name is Dr. Robert Melillo. Thanks for coming on, Dr. Melillo.
Caden, thank you very much. I'm really excited to be here and to meet you.
Thank you, sir. My first question for you is, for those that may not know Dr. Melillo, what's your story in your own words?
My story is that, at a young age, I was got interested in healthcare. I was an athlete. I was always into exercise and diet and natural forms of health, and naturally also had some injuries. So I wanted to go into the healthcare field. It made sense for me initially to go into the chiropractic field because it made sense to me from a natural, holistic perspective. When I was there, I fell in love with neurology and neuroscience. And I wanted to find a way of combining rehabilitation and neurology and neuroscience together, along with diet and nutrition, to help other people. And so I started doing that. And then I got a board certified in neurology and board certified in rehabilitation. I also have a degree in clinical rehabilitation neuropsychology, and I have a PhD in developmental cognitive neuroscience. And I've been a lifelong learner and educator, but, my own children all had issues at a certain point, and that really got me interested in understanding childhood issues or things that were developmental, which really got me into understanding or wanting to study developmental neuroscience. And along with that, because I'm a rehab person, I wanted to come up with ways that I could try to help and try to see if I could improve anything that they needed help with. And that developed into a program that initially was called Brain Balance Program, and then it evolved into now the Melillo method. And again, I've done a lot of research. I have over 800 publications. I have textbooks. I have 8 best-selling books. I'm in practice. I continue to do research. I head up a research lab. Really the past several years, my focus has really been on trying to understand non-speaking autism and what is actually preventing people from speak and how do we change that?
That's definitely amazing. And that's something I hope, especially this year specifically, that research comes out about what's preventing nonverbal individuals from speaking, because I would like to know how is nonverbal till 7 personally. My next question for you is, what makes the Melillo method unique from other forms of therapy out there, like, say, ABA therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy? I've watched some of your interviews, and the way you explain it is that you work from the bottom of the brain all the way up. But can you explain that further? For example, what does a typical day at the Melillo headquarters or a typical treatment regimen look like?
Sure. Yeah, I think, there's a lot of great tools out there, like you mentioned, OT, physical therapy, there's diet, there's nutrition, there's supplements, there's immune therapies, there's cognitive-based therapies. There's a lot of tools out there. But I think what makes the Melillo method unique is that it's not just about the tools, it's how you're using the tools and how you may be combining them. And what is the primary goal of what you're doing? So my 30-year plus of research really started with the question of what's actually happening in the brain of someone that has any sort of a developmental issue, whether it's ADHD or autism or OCD or tics or Tourette's or dyslexia or learning disabilities. And we know that even 90% of most adult issues like bipolar, schizophrenia, they all start in childhood. So it's all about development. So for me, it was about really understanding what the actual issue is, and then trying to use that information to understand how can we change that or improve that in people that want us to, right? Because there are a lot of people in your area, in neurodiverse area, that really don't feel that they need help or assistance, and that's, totally to be respected. But there are those that, like all of us, we can all get better. We all have strengths and weaknesses. So I think the uniqueness is that I think I understand what the actual problem or issue is in the brain. And it starts with, actually, anybody on the autism spectrum like you is really a genius with their left brain, right? The left brain skills are just incredible. Like you said, you have, what did you say, 6 in a row? What did you get, 6 in a row?
16 lists.
Six right.
Weeks ago.
6 dean lists in a row. I mean, that's obviously only people that are really pretty brilliant can do that. And even the non-speaking individuals with autism that I work with, when we have ways of them being able to communicate, we realize that they are brilliant. They are, geniuses. And that's one aspect of it. And, is an area of the brain that's unusually strong. And that comes from your family. I'm sure other people in your family probably have similar skills or traits as you. We know that, there's been studies showing that in families with people with autism, there's a lot more people that are physicists or mathematicians or engineers or work in the IT industry or finance industry. These jobs are all things that really people excel with left brain skills. But if the right brain is relatively delayed because the left brain becomes too dominant, what we see is that areas of the brain may stay in a more immature state. And this leads to these imbalances. And that starts from the bottom up, as you talked about. It starts from the very base of the brainstem. And there are these things called primitive reflexes. That is what allows a child to move in the womb. And in the first year of life, when they don't have a motor cortex yet, it allows them to really move, to engage the world and build their brain and turn on the genes. But then they need to go away and allow for the next step. So the brain builds like layers from the bottom up. And then once it forms, then it comes down and regulates everything. What we find is that these reflexes don't go away, and that causes what we call bottom-up interference and doesn't allow that completion to take place, and then prevents that proper top-down regulation of the body and the brain and the emotions and things like that normally would happen. So one of the first things we need to do is get rid of those reflexes. But then this leads to this imbalance between networks in the brain, where we have certain networks on the left side that are overactive or come online too early that can cause things like tics. Like there's an area called Brodmann area 6, supplemental motor area on the left side. If that's overactive, that's where tics or stimming or repetitive movements come from. There's an area called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex on the left, that if it's overactive, that's where obsessive thoughts can come from. If the orbital frontal cortex can cause compulsive behaviors, so OCD behaviors. So there's literally neuroanatomical issues. And I think overall, that's what makes my approach unique, is that we're looking at the core issue. We understand the development of the brain and that it all starts with development. We understand that there are areas that are naturally gifted and may become too strong. And we need to create a balance. We need to remove what's blocking it. And we need to be able to create balance in these networks. And that's what we're trying to do. I mean, all of us, we just want to be, we want to have the best balance in our brain. Again, I always say we're not trying to change people. Well, you guys are amazing. I mean, you're incredible, intelligent, and I'm sure your parents are very proud of you and all of that. But we all have things that we can do better in life, right? We all have strengths and weaknesses. And the more we can create a balance between our strengths and weaknesses, the better we're all going to function. And not only in our brain and in our behavior, but it also, the brain regulates our body. It regulates our immune system and our digestive system and all of that. And none of us want to be walking around with inflammation in our body or anything like that.
Exactly. That's a really nice way to put it. Not just with autism or social awareness or that kind of thing, but with anything really. That I exercise social media everything's honestly about balance and taking accountability. That you have some issues, but there's also some amazing things that people can do. My next question for you is, you've worked with one of my favorite comedians, Kevin James, specifically his daughter. I watched that testimony from him, and while he's not a doctor, of course, he spoke very highly of you. What memory specifically do you have of Kevin coming into office that you would like to share?
Well, first I'd just say that obviously Kevin is a great parent. He's a wonderful dad. And his wife is also an amazing mother. And he loves his children more than anything, like most parents. And, he was obviously, his daughter was struggling with a lot of issues. Again, as we talked about, not just, some OCD issues, but she developed these really bad tics, terrible tics. And she also had, more like terrible eczema all over her. And she couldn't sleep at night, and she had a lot of OCD behaviors. And she was an amazing, talented artist, incredible writer. She was writing books like Lord of the Rings and had characters that she created digitally, amazing. So that's, again, the genius level that she had. But she was also struggling, and the tics obviously were very upsetting. They were in the middle of doing a play, and of course it was very disruptive. She would have hundreds of tics a day that were very loud and violent and aggressive. They went to a number of doctors who literally, laughed at them and said, there's nothing we can do about tics. Nobody can do anything about that. But his wife, had read my book, and they reached out to me, and, they come from Long Island, where I'm from. And so they lived near me. And they asked if I would see their daughter, and I said, sure. So they came in, and we were able to, in about 3 or 4 weeks, able to get rid of her tics. And obviously, there's a lot of other work that we needed to work with her. But we helped her in many, many, many different areas. And we're still working with her now. And I still see Kevin, and he's been very grateful. And again, he's a super nice guy, and he, is just a great dad, just wanted to help. And that's why he said to me, this was when we were able to help his daughter with these tics. It was so upsetting to them that, he was so grateful. And he said, I want to let the world know about what you did and how you helped. And because everybody else is told that there's nothing we could do about it, and there was no hope. And that's why he went on Joe Rogan and spoke about it, and actually mentioned it. And he said that he was going to do that. I didn't ask him to do it. He did it just because he felt like he wanted other parents and other people to know what else was out there, and he wanted to help.
That's definitely great. I think I might have listened to a bit of that Joe Rogan episode specifically. I'm not sure, though. I mainly watched the testimony. I love the Kevin personally, and shame on those doctors for laughing at them. That's just unprofessional, honestly. My next question for you is, for any parent out there that may not know what to do with a child on the spectrum, may not know which options work best for them, what's your advice to them from the perspective of a medical provider?
Yes. Well, first of all, I understand that the traditional approach is going to be, parents are going to be told that there's really nothing you can do about it other than just accept it. And again, I think obviously anybody in the neurodiverse community should be not only accepted, but embraced and treated with love and respect like everybody else. But the idea that, again, that we can't change or create more balance in the brain is not true. Most the professionals out there, not because they're bad people, they really just have no idea how the brain works. None. And they really don't understand how the brain develops, or, what is really happening in the brain. And if you don't really know what the root cause is or what the problem is, then you really have no idea how to help it. And so they feel like they're being kind by telling people, they don't want to create false hope, but instead they just take away any hope. And I don't think that's right either. And I think that, people have to understand that you may have to step outside of the traditional box and read a book like mine, which, again, we have a ton of research backing up everything that we do in some of the best journals in the world. So it's very scientifically valid, but it's not, common knowledge. It's not what, the traditional pediatrician or pediatric neurologist is going to say, although we hope to be changing that. So I think, be prepared to have people tell you that there's really nothing you can do and that just be, just live with it and whatever. But that's not, I don't think that's true. If you should choose to help improve. And as we said, we're not saying that there's anything wrong per se. We're just saying that everybody can be balanced, that more, that even kids that are non-speaking, they're geniuses in their left brain. They're brilliant. And a lot of people, will treat those kids like they're not there or like they don't know anything. And many therapists, that's their approach, that they believe that these, non-speaking kids are intellectually disabled or intellectually impaired. And that's not true. These kids are there. They understand everything, but they can't control their body and they can't move their body the way that they want. But that can be changed. And, we have many, many kids that were not speaking that now speak. And many of them speak really very well. It is possible. Change is possible. But, whatever you choose, nobody should be judging you in any way. I never judge anybody and what they do. However a parent chooses to look at it or deal with it, or however the individual themselves, it's, I respect whatever their decisions are. But obviously anybody that's non-speaking deserves a right to try to be able to speak, right? And I think there is hope. So, just stay positive, stay hopeful, do your education, be open-minded to other people outside in the traditional, medical world. And I think you will find some answers, and that you can, you can really see some amazing benefits if you go down that road.
I absolutely agree. All autistic individuals deserve respect. I have a bit of a story for you before I ask the final question. When I was diagnosed at 2 years old, the doctor that diagnosed me said I wouldn't be able to do college. He said at best I might be able to pull off trade school specifically. My parents were stubborn. They pushed me to my limits because they knew I was capable of so much more than that. So honestly, I really like that advice you gave. Be open-minded, don't judge people by standards, and treat anyone in the neurodiverse community with kindness and respect. My last question for you is, what does the future hold for you? I know you have a podcast. Do you have any upcoming episodes that we can look forward to?
Yeah, I do a two podcasts, one my own called Melillo Method podcast. That's really more about, like kind of more hardcore neuroscience and clinical. But then I do one with my daughter. My daughter Ellis is an incredible singer-songwriter that lives in Nashville. She's got many great songs out there. A guy named Zach Brown. I don't know if you know Zach Brown Band, but he also is a friend of mine. But he produced my daughter's album, and she actually has a new song coming out on his new album. And so we do a podcast really geared more towards the right brain dominant community. People in the autism world have a left brain dominance, as we talked about. A lot of people in, let's say, music and art and acting and comedy, like Kevin James, they have more of a right brain dominant style of thinking, and they have their own neurodivergent issues with anxiety and social anxiety and self-esteem issues. And so we've done a number of really, really interesting, we've interviewed some of the top songwriters and singers and YouTubers in the world. And there's a lot of great stories that they talk about their struggles, and They have really good advice for people on how to help them. And of course, I always translate it into a neuroscience perspective. What is happening in the brain? Where do these feelings come from in the brain? And what are things we can do neurologically to create balance in their brain, and help them to not have so much anxiety or fear or, self-esteem issues. So, not many of them have learning disabilities. Like my daughter struggled with some dyslexia, but she could write songs when she was like 9 or 10 that right out of her head. So there's, again, this wide spectrum of that we have in this neurodiverse community. And so that's there. And as far as for me in the future, I'm just continue to do a lot of research. I just want to understand the brain at the deepest level and convert that into treatments that will help people at all ages. I want to work with, again, especially this community of non-speaking autism. I want to find how we can, even more consistently and better try to give them their voice, and do that without taking away their genius. Like try to give them an actual voice, so that people understand how brilliant they are and not take away that geniusness in any way. And to me, that's kind of like the ultimate challenge and mystery right now. And, I will spend the rest of my life searching for answers and trying to convert them into solutions. And, I think, Caden, what's driven me a lot in my life is that, for one reason or another, I've asked questions that other people never asked before. And so that allows you to come up with answers that other people didn't come up with. And then that leads to solutions to problems that other people couldn't come with. And that's what kind of drives me moving forward.
Yeah, I really like that. And I actually love Zach Brown. That's my dad's favorite artist, Zach Brown. And so it sounds like you guys have a lot going on in your world. Anyway, that's going to do it for this Autism Digest interview, guys. Thank you so much to Dr. Melillo for coming on, telling his story, and letting us know about the Melillo method. If you guys want to see more amazing Autism Digest interviews, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Autism Digest channel. Just a reminder that all of our interviews are going to be on Spotify soon. We just posted the 9th one this week, so if you have a chance, be sure to go check that out. Check out our May issue that just came out by going to autismdigest.com. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.